The last thing you remember is the cold. Not the cold of winter. Not the cold of rain-soaked boots or nights spent in foxholes with nothing but a thin wool blanket between you and the frost. This cold was different. This cold was deliberate. It moved through you like something alive, slow, patient, and precise, as if it had been designed specifically for your body, for your bones, for the space between your heartbeats. You remember the bunker, 50 feet underground, somewhere beneath the forests of northern France. You remember the smell of concrete and metal and something chemical, sharp, almost sweet. You remember the white coats, the clipboards, the man with the round glasses who kept calling you Subject 11, even though your name was Thomas. Thomas Edwin Calloway, from Columbus, Ohio, son of Harold and Ruth, husband of Margaret, brother of George. You remember signing the form. You remember what they told you. This experiment could shorten the war by years, could save hundreds of thousands of lives. All we need is 6 volunteers willing to go under, just for a few weeks, maybe a month. We'll bring you back when it's done. You remember thinking of Margaret, of the letter she'd sent 3 weeks ago, the one where she said she'd planted tomatoes in the back garden, and that the dog had learned to sit on command. You remember thinking, a month isn't so long. A month is nothing. And if it helps end this thing, if it means I come home sooner, then it's worth it. You remember lying down on the table. You remember the cold beginning. And then, white. You open your eyes. The ceiling is white. But it is the wrong kind of white. It is smooth in a way that ceilings in 1943 are not smooth. There are no water stains, no plaster cracks, no flickering bulbs overhead. There is a light, but it does not flicker. It simply exists steady and silent, embedded in the ceiling as if it grew there. You try to sit up. Your body feels like it has been filled with wet sand. Every muscle protests. A sound escapes you, something between a groan and a gasp, and almost immediately a face appears above you. A woman, young, dark hair pulled back. She is wearing clothes unlike anything you have ever seen. A kind of pale blue shirt with a small logo on the breast pocket and trousers that look almost like work pants, but aren't. She is holding something small and flat and glowing, and when she sees your eyes open, her own eyes go wide. "Oh my God," she says. "He's awake." He's actually awake. She turns her head and calls out, "Dr. Ose. Dr. Ose, get in here. Subject 11 is awake." Subject 11. The words hit you like a wall of cold water. So you are still in the experiment, still under their care. The relief you feel lasts exactly 4 seconds, until Dr. Ose walks through the door. He is a tall man, dark-skinned, with silver hair at his temples, and a calm, careful face that reminds you of a professor. He is not wearing a white coat. He is wearing a suit. But again, wrong. The fabric is wrong. The cut is wrong. Everything is wrong in ways you cannot yet name. "Thomas," he says, pulling a chair to your bedside and sitting down slowly, as if he does not want to frighten you. "Thomas Edwin Calloway, can you hear me clearly?" "Yes," you say. "Your voice sounds like gravel." "Good." He folds his hands in his lap. He does not reach for a clipboard. He does not check instruments. He simply looks at you, and there is something in his eyes that you will spend the next several days trying to identify. Later, you will realize what it is. Guilt. "Thomas, I need to tell you something, and I need you to try to stay calm when I do." Can you do that? You have survived 2 years on the front. You have seen things that would empty most men out completely. You are not afraid of difficult news. "Tell me," you say. "The year," Dr. Ose says, "is 2024. 2024. You were frozen in November of 1943. That means you have been under for 81 years. 81 years. The number refuses to sit still in your mind. It keeps moving, keeps shifting, keeps attaching itself to things. Margaret would be 103 years old. She was 22 when you left. George, your brother, 3 years younger, who used to steal your baseball cards and blame it on the cat, would be 99. If he made it through the war. You don't know if he made it through the war. Your mother and father are gone. You know this without being told. They were both in their 50s when you shipped out. You do not need a doctor to explain what 81 years means for people in their 50s. The house on Elmwood Avenue, the one with the green shutters and the oak tree in the front yard that your father planted the year you were born, is either someone else's home now, or it is rubble, or it is a parking lot. You don't know. You cannot yet bring yourself to ask. They bring you soup. It is tomato soup from a carton, not a can, a carton, and the spoon is made of something that is not quite metal and not quite plastic. You eat it mechanically. It tastes like nothing. The experiment, you say, after the soup is gone. The other 5. The other volunteers. Where are they? Dr. Osei sets down his clipboard. The clipboard, you have noticed, glows. We only found you, Thomas. The records from 1943 were incomplete. We found the bunker 6 years ago, during a construction project. It took us 3 years to understand what we were looking at, and another 3 to safely bring you to the surface. The others, we don't know, he says. We may never know. You think of the 5 other men who lay down on those tables beside you. You do not even remember their faces clearly, only fragments. A red-haired man from somewhere in the South. A quiet fellow who had a photograph of twin girls tucked into his breast pocket. On the 4th day, a young man named Marcus brings you something small and flat and black. He holds it out to you with both hands, like an offering. It's called a smartphone, he says. Basically, it's a telephone, but it also has access to all recorded human knowledge. Everything ever written, photographed, filmed, recorded. All of it. In your hand, you stare at it. All of it? More or less. The first thing you search for is Margaret. Margaret Louise Calloway, nee Harper. Columbus, Ohio. You find her. There is an obituary from 1998. She passed at the age of 77. She remarried in 1951, a man named Robert Weiss, a school teacher. They had 2 children, a daughter named Carol and a son named James. The obituary says she was a devoted mother and grandmother, that she loved gardening and the Ohio State Buckeyes, and that she is remembered for her warmth and her laugh. You read the obituary 4 times. You do not cry. You are not sure you are capable of crying yet. Your body is still catching up to the present. But something in your chest does a thing it has never done before. A slow, silent collapse, like a building choosing to fall in on itself rather than outward. She did not wait for you. Of course she did not wait for you. You did not come home. You vanished. To her, to everyone, you simply ceased to exist somewhere in the winter of 1943. She planted tomatoes. She got a new dog, probably. She found a schoolteacher named Robert, and she built a life, a full and real and lovely life, and she died surrounded by grandchildren at the age of 77. Good, you think? That is good. That is the right outcome. That is what you would have wanted. You put the phone face down on the bed, and you stare at the white ceiling for a very long time. 2 weeks after you wake up, they bring in a historian. She is a small woman in her 40s, with careful eyes and a voice that suggests she has spent most of her life asking questions. Her name is Dr. Reeves. Tell me about the Battle of the Ardennes Corridor. You say, November 14th, 1943, the 88th Infantry. We held that ridge for 6 days. We lost over 3,000 men in the first night alone. The Germans had artillery we'd never seen before, mobile units, fast, repositioned constantly, so we couldn't target them. We held anyway. My commanding officer, Colonel Marsh, he kept us together when everything said to fall back. It should be in every history book. Dr. Reeves has gone very still. Thomas, she says carefully. Can you tell me exactly where this took place? You describe it. The ridge, the forest, the names of the nearby villages, the coordinates your officers had marked on their maps. She takes notes. She asks questions. She goes away for 3 days. When she comes back, she sits across from you with a look you are beginning to recognize. The same look Dr. Ossé had when he told you the year. Careful, weighted, guilty. I can find records of the 88th Infantry, she says. They existed. They were active in France in 1943. But the battle you're describing, the ridge, the artillery, the 6-day engagement, there's no official record of it. None. The engagement doesn't appear in any American, British, French, or German military records from that period. It's as if it never happened. You look at her for a long time. 3,000 men, you say. I know. 3,000 men. I watched them. I was there. I carried 2 of them on my back. I held one while you stop, you breathe. 3,000 men, and nobody wrote it down? Dr. Reeves does not have an answer. Nobody, it turns out, has an answer. The battle you fought in, the worst night of your life, the night that carved itself into you so deeply that you have never once, in any version of your existence, managed to forget it, has been swallowed by history without a trace. They set you up in an apartment. It is small and clean and on the 4th floor of a building in Washington, D.C., which you are told is still the capital, which is one of the few things that has not changed enough to be unrecognizable. Marcus comes twice a week to help you navigate what he calls the modern world, which you privately think of as the world that happened while you were asleep. He shows you how to use the phone, how to use the television, which is no longer a box with a screen, but a flat panel on the wall, thin as a picture frame, showing images so crisp they look more real than real life. He shows you how to lock and unlock the door with a card instead of a key. These things are strange, but they are learnable. What is harder, much harder, is everything invisible. The way people speak to each other now. The way they don't look at each other on the street. The way everyone is always half somewhere else, eyes down, thumbs moving on their glowing rectangles. The way the city is louder and faster and more crowded than anything you could have imagined, and yet somehow lonelier, or at least that is how it feels to you, a man who has nobody. You are, technically speaking, 81 years out of date, but your body is 26. You are a 26-year-old man with 81 years of absence in his chest, and no one left to explain it to. George, you eventually learn, survived the war. He came home in 1945, married a woman named Patricia, had 4 children, worked for 30 years as an electrician, and died in 1991 at the age of 74. His oldest grandson, a man named Daniel Calloway, who is 53 years old and lives in Cincinnati, is your grandnephew, the only living family you have. You write him a letter, an actual letter, on actual paper, because you are not yet ready to trust a phone with something this important. You explain, briefly, carefully, knowing how impossible it sounds, who you are and what happened. You give him the name of Dr. Ossé, who can verify everything. You tell him you do not want anything from him. You do not expect anything. You simply wanted him to know that George's brother existed and loved his brother and is still somehow here. 3 weeks later, your phone rings, an unfamiliar number. You answer it the way Marcus taught you. "Is this Thomas?" says the voice on the other end. It is a man's voice, older, with a trace of Ohio in it. "It is," you say, a pause. Then, "My grandfather used to say he had a brother who went to war and never came home. He talked about him his whole life. He kept a photograph." Another pause. "You look like the photograph." You sit down on the floor of your apartment in Washington, D.C. in the year 2024, and for the first time since you woke up in that white room, you let yourself feel everything that has been waiting quietly behind your ribs. The hardest part is not the technology. It is not the food, or the language, or the money, or learning to pay for things by holding your phone over a small machine. The hardest part is not even the grief, though the grief is enormous, a country of grief, so wide you could spend the rest of your life walking across it and never reach the other side. The hardest part is the erasure. 3,000 men fought and fell on a ridge in northern France in November of 1943. They had names. They had mothers and brothers and dogs and gardens with tomatoes and baseball cards and photographs of twin daughters. They had whole lives, real, specific, irreplaceable lives, and they gave them up on a ridge that history forgot, in a battle that does not appear in any textbook, in a war that the world has spent 80 years trying to make sense of and still has not managed to get entirely right. You are the only one left who knows, the only living proof that those men existed, that the battle happened, that the ground on that ridge was earned at a cost that should never, under any circumstances, have been allowed to go unrecorded. So you do the only thing you can think of. You write it down, not on a glowing screen, on paper, the old way, because that is the way you know, and because paper, you have always believed, has a kind of permanence that other things don't, a stubbornness, a refusal to disappear. You write down every name you remember, every face. The red-haired man from the South, you think his name was Patterson, from Georgia. The quiet fellow with the photograph of the twin daughters, Harrison, maybe. You write down what happened on November 14th, 1943, as precisely as you can. The ridge, the trees, the sound of the artillery repositioning in the darkness, that grinding mechanical sound you have never been able to fully unhear. Colonel Marsh's voice over the radio, steady as stone. We hold this ground. You write down the cold, the particular deliberate cold of the bunker, and what it felt like to go under, and what it felt like to come back. You write it all down. Because someone has to. Because you are here, impossibly, 81 years out of place, and if there is any reason for that, any purpose to the strange accident of your survival, then perhaps it is simply this, to remember. To refuse to let the world's forgetfulness be the final word. Daniel Calloway drives up from Cincinnati the following Saturday. He is a big man, broad in the shoulders, with George's forehead and a handshake that means business. He brings his wife and his youngest daughter, who is 19 and studying history at Ohio State, and she sits across from you with a recorder and a notebook and eyes that are bright with the kind of hunger that good historians have. Tell me everything, she says. And you do. You are Thomas Edwin Calloway from Columbus, Ohio. You are 26 years old. You went under in 1943 and woke up in 2024, and the world moved 81 years without you. Your wife lived a good life and is at peace. Your brother lived a good life and is at peace. The men you fought beside on a ridge in northern France have been forgotten by history. But you remember. You are still here, and you remember. And as long as you can hold a pen, you will make sure the world does too.